We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.
This is Soundside.
Hearing static when you enter a tunnel in the middle of a fascinating story? Hanging out in your driveway to catch the end of a report? We've been there. With the KUOW app, you can listen to your favorite programs anytime and anywhere. No driveways required. Let's get going. Download the KUOW app now, available for iOS and Android.
The holiday shopping season isn't what it used to be.
Well, Americans are estimated to have spent about $8 billion in online purchases on Black Friday.
Companies use every online click to target specific ads to certain consumers.
If having your online shopping tracked so closely creeps you out, you might be tempted to hit the mall instead.
All my friends are gonna be there.
A magical place where you can meet Santa and go back to the way shopping used to be.
Let's go to the mall today.
But actually, AI is tracking you there, too. I'm Joshua McNichols.
I'm Monica Nicholsberg, and this is Booming, a podcast about the economic forces shaping our lives here in the Pacific Northwest.
Many brick-and-mortar stores depend on holiday sales to stay alive. And increasingly, they're borrowing tricks from the online world to get us to buy stuff. Lots of stuff.
Retailers and shopping apps are rolling out new tools and AI that will bring the best of online shopping into the store with you.
So in the age of artificial intelligence, is there any way to stop being tracked when you shop? That's coming up. So Joshua, we're deep in the holiday shopping season, and a lot of us are going online. So what made you want to do a story about shopping in person?
Well, there's a lot of talk about how we're being tracked online when we shop there. I think especially here in Seattle because our retailers are fairly tech savvy. We've got Amazon here. But I've heard that some of that tracking is happening in physical stores too. So I wanted to figure out how much of that is true and whether AI is changing that. It's hard to get stores to talk about this, so I met up with an industry insider in a mall just east of Seattle. His name is Robert Frederick, and he develops tracking hardware and AI software for retail stores. It was a chilly Sunday morning, and we arrived just as it was opening. Employees were rushing in with lattes in their hands. And once the gates rolled up, we walked through one of the mall's anchor department stores.
I want to get money out of your wallet. I want to get you to charge whatever you can afford when you're going into my store.
I know he sounds like a supervillain when he says that, but he's just voicing the deepest desire of every major retail store.
I feel that desire coming off of these stores, and I don't think that they stop at what I can afford.
No, they definitely don't. So a little bit about Rob. He was he started his career in retail. He was managing retail stores. And then later he became an executive at Amazon during its early days, where his job was helping Amazon reach customers outside of their website. Now he runs a tech company in Seattle called Circle that makes high-tech dealy-bobs that track you.
Like what?
Like things that screw into like a light bulb socket, and then you screw the light bulb under that, and then they track where your phone's moving.
Okay, so like spy movie stuff.
Yeah, I mean, his philosophy is that brick-and-mortar stores must learn from online stores in order to survive. Online retailers know tons of stuff about you. They know your search history. They know the things that your mouse hovered over that you didn't buy.
They somehow know that based on like who I follow on Instagram, what I'm going to want before I do.
Yeah. And when you're in a physical store, you also leave a trail that can be tracked. You know, stores know what you picked up and what you put down. They know where you stood in front of a shelf for a long time and maybe decided not to buy something. Stores have always tracked this to some extent. Even old-timey general stores, you had somebody peering over their glasses from the cash register, kind of watching where you move. But new technologies today automate this process, and they generate huge volumes of data. And now AI is reshaping how stores analyze that data. And they're becoming much better at using that data to get you to buy more stuff.
Okay, help me understand this. Say, for example, I'm like shopping for new button-downs. My husband really needs new button-downs. So walk me through what happens when I go into a department store.
From the moment you walk in, a wide variety of sensors start tracking you in different ways. Some are invisible, hidden behind the ceiling tiles. Some hang below those ceiling tiles in clusters, like mushrooms growing out of the ceiling. They're all building a picture of who you are and where you're going and what you're doing, what you're changing your mind about, and ultimately what you buy. And they're feeding it into an AI that helps them determine which of their strategies are working. Like, here's a strategy related to how they lay out their stores. Okay, you're looking for button-down shirts. You're walking down the aisle and you see a clearance rack. It's got some button-down shirts on it. So you start looking at those, and then next to it, there's some shirts that are slightly discounted. So maybe you pick up one of each. You're like, well, I got a good deal on this clearance. Maybe I'll pay a little bit more for the second shirt. And next to that is a table with a really expensive sweater on it that goes with those shirts. And then behind that, there's like jackets, and these lure you to the most expensive items, suits.
So there's a traffic pattern that you're trying to get. Clearance, sales, regular, most expensive.
This really resonates with me and feels very manipulative because I am someone who likes to reward myself with a little treat when I find a good deal. And so this would definitely be effective for me.
Yeah, it's like a trail of breadcrumbs. And they want to know if they have the right breadcrumbs in the right place to lead you where they want you to go.
Okay, so how am I actually being tracked? Is it like my phone? Is it facial recognition? Something else?
All of the above. Every store has its own unique mix of technologies, so not every one of these applies to every store. But let's take security cameras. Those are some of the most common. They're everywhere. You may think they're for catching thieves, and that's a big part of what they're for. But actually, they're also for catching your likeness as a paying customer. They want to know your face. They want to know your gait, how you walk.
So if we walk past 50 cameras in the store, it's going to be stitching together all of the references of you, and it's going to basically say this person wearing these clothes with this facial identity walked along this path, and these are the places that they stopped.
This is wild. So it's like an educated guess about me based on how I walk and dress and shop in their store?
Well, it's identifying you as an individual. I mean, it's not saying this is Monica Nicholsberg necessarily, but it's knowing that you are this individual, you walked this path through the store.
But it might be saying, this is a millennial who looks like she's here to spend a little money.
Yeah, that's the kind of category they would love to put you in.
Wow.
Yeah. I should add here that Rob Frederick does not like cameras, and he hates facial recognition. He refuses to use it. And that's because facial recognition has biases built into it that harm black men like him, especially when the data is shared with police departments all across the country.
If you are someone who looks like me, you might actually be misidentified and then have a pretty bad experience when you walk into that mall. I know it sounds ironic because I have sensors that we manufacture and do stuff with, but those sensors are still, there's a line, and you don't cross the line.
But cameras are just one piece of the puzzle. There are so many other sensors that AI can combine together to understand who you are. Inside the ceiling, there's something they call a pizza box. And inside that pizza box, there's a little radar spinning around, picking up signals. Many of those signals come from tags that are attached to clothing. You know, you've probably seen the larger RFID tags, but there's also low-energy Bluetooth tags hidden on store items. And they feed off energy put out by the Wi-Fi system. They don't even need batteries in there. So the system knows when you pick up some clothes, when you carry it around, when you take it into the changing room. It knows when you combine multiple items of clothing on your arm. So it kind of knows what outfits you are assembling.
So when I hang a bunch of hangers off of my left arm and then like keep picking things up with my right, they know what combination of clothes I have right there.
Yeah, so that's pretty practical if they want to think about where to group items in the store, right?
Can they still track me if I don't pick anything up?
Yes, they can. I mean, your phone is the biggest source of information for them, especially if you log into their app. And I have to confess that I do this when I go shopping because I'm kind of looking for the best price. So I log into the app so I can see if there's any discounts there. Apps can get you discounts. They can get you loyalty rewards. But many app privacy policies also opt you into their in-store surveillance. Many of the big retail chains do this. For example, the Macy's app allows the company to collect your face, your ethnicity, your location, and you opt in when you agree to the privacy policy. Some stores gather more data about you than others, and they combine that data with stuff they know about you from online, including how you interact with their products on social media.
Okay, well, what if I don't log into one of those apps? Do they still track my phone?
Yeah, Rob's company captures cell phone leakage and other kinds of signals that come off you.
Leakage? What am I leaking?
Well, your phone puts out something called a unique device identifier. Recently, Apple made this harder to track, but it's still there. Your phone is always searching for Wi-Fi. So the store's Wi-Fi can see that, and it knows what networks you're searching for. And then if you log on to their Wi-Fi, information sent over their Wi-Fi is not secure, and they can see it to some extent. They can see where you're sending signals to. The Bluetooth on your phone, that's another point of leakage. You know, it's trying to connect with your earphones, for example. Your earphones also put out a Bluetooth signal. Bluetooth signals don't go as far, so you have to put the sensors in more places to pick that up, but it's another kind of leakage. This variety of ways that your phones send out signals kind of explains why AI is so useful. All these streams of information from all these different sensors, to a human being, they're just noise. Like, nobody can understand what all this stuff means. But the AI is the brain that puts together the puzzle to form the whole picture of who you are, your virtual self.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my mind around this because I'm just walking around spitting out all of this information all the time. You mentioned that they use that data to decide how they're going to lay things out in the store. Are they using it in other ways?
Yes, they use that data to lure you back into the store after you've left, or to lure you to their online store. I'll give you an example. Say you're in a home improvement warehouse and you're standing in front of a lawnmower and you're like, this looks pretty expensive, but I really need it. And you kind of scratch your chin a bunch, and then after a while, you leave, right? So one way they could use this data is to send you an email after you've left reminding you about this lawnmower and that it's still there for you. And hey, if you don't want to come back to the store, you can still buy it online.
This really helps me understand something that I feel like we all have experienced where we're like, how do they know? How do they know I was thinking about buying this thing and now they're following me all over the internet with these ads?
Yeah, exactly.
How do they know my email?
Well, if you are part of a loyalty program, then of course you entered your email when you signed up for that. But, maybe you bought something smaller and you used a credit card, and maybe previously they know who owns that credit card, or maybe they combined it with other data that they bought from third-party sources that are not part of the store. You know, there's a whole marketplace of this data. But this virtual Monica Nickelsburg that they've worked so hard to put together from their own data also has market value outside of that company to advertisers. And the value of virtual Monica Nickelsburg is set at auction.
Wait, excuse me?
Yes, you're being auctioned off.
I'm being my virtual self is being auctioned off.
Yeah.
Please explain.
Okay. Well, this is called programmatic advertising. That's the technical term for it. Each marketer has different types of people that they're looking for. If you spend a huge amount on those button-down shirts that you were looking for, then your profile is probably worth way more than mine to a button-down shirt maker, especially since I get a lot of my shirts at Goodwill. If you're a social media influencer, you're worth even more.
Wow. I'm kind of speechless. I am not a social media influencer, and, I've made a lot of jokes in this conversation, but I do buy the vast majority of my stuff secondhand. But there is one area where I feel like they could really get my number, and that is baby stuff. Because I don't know if you remember when your kids were little, but sometimes you're just so tired and feel so stuck, and you're like, I will throw any amount of money at the problem if there is a product that can solve this for me. And they know that. They are all over my feeds. They're advertising to me. The makers of baby products know that parents are one of the most vulnerable groups to overconsumption.
Yes, and I am embarrassed to say this, but my profile is probably worth more to hair loss drug makers because I'm a middle-aged man. I mean, I still got some hair, but
You've got a nice head of hair.
I'm in that category. And in the old days, advertisers tended to think of people in certain large categories. There were young people, there were old people, people in cities, people outside of cities, and they would target ads to those large groups. But AI can create unlimited subcategories of people, and advertisers can use AI to create thousands of customized ads that they deliver to people in an unlimited number of different places. This is not where we are quite yet, but theoretically, we could reach a point where every individual person gets their own unique ad through whatever platform, like Instagram, they spend their most time on.
Wow. So, how much of this surveillance is actually legal?
I asked that of Ryan KUOW. He's a law professor at the University of Washington, and he started the Tech Policy Lab there. He said it's kind of gray whether it's legal or not. The laws that the Federal Trade Commission has to work with at the federal level are squishy. They don't define what's illegal very clearly. So a lot of states have stepped up and written their own rules. Washington State is one of those.
The Washington consumer is, relatively well protected.
But not as well protected as consumers in California, Massachusetts, or Illinois. Illinois has a law banning the collection of biometric data, like your face or the way you walk.
This feels like a big deal, but we're also used to being tracked all over the internet when we shop in these really sophisticated ways. So why should we care if it's happening in a store?
Well, some people won't care, and that's fine. I mean, for example, Robert Frederick, he feels like tracking in general, while he doesn't like facial recognition, is a good thing because it helps stores present to you the goods that you actually may want in your life. And some people may just be tired of seeing irrelevant ads all the time. So, maybe you'll find your online experience more rewarding if you see things that are meant for you.
Yeah, I can relate to that. But I think for me, the big concern is, yes, I'm used to being tracked all over the internet when I shop, but shopping in person is supposed to be an escape from that. It's supposed to be more of an old school way of doing things where I don't feel like there's this huge power imbalance between the store and me.
Yeah. Well, there's some things you can do to try to mitigate your exposure a little bit. You can turn off your cell phone. You can not log into those apps. But basically, there's not a way to opt out of this system. And maybe there should be. The thing that keeps Ryan KUOW up at night is how this kind of data collection makes the world less fair.
What I get really worried about is the advantage taking, the fact that consumers may not appreciate how the prices are creeping up. They're being offset apparently by sales, but those sales are not landing evenly across the population.
This is a really important point that he's making. You can get left out of the best sales or discounts if you don't or can't raise the value of your profile high enough for a company to pay attention to you.
So if I am not someone who they have profiled as a big spender, then I might just be sort of forgotten about?
Yeah, exactly. And Ryan KUOW said this could widen wealth gaps in the U.S.
By rewarding people who are perceived to be valued customers and penalizing those who are not. You know what I mean? Systemically speaking, when companies study consumers for their own benefit, consumers can get harmed by having fewer opportunities, by paying more than they need to.
Okay, well, if it's not really possible to opt out, what can we do? Is there any way to outsmart this system?
Well, Ryan KUOW says, we could urge our elected leaders to ban certain practices, if you care about that. Lawmakers could require that everybody sees the same prices, whether they opt into some loyalty program or not. So that's a law that people could pass. But, Rob Frederick and I had some fun tossing around this idea of, what would it mean to be a chaotic shopper? We started joking around with the idea of, what if you went into a store and bought a cheese grater and a belt and one plate? Random stuff that an AI could make no rhyme or reason out of. That would be a way of not playing into their hand of building your virtual self. Actually, this would make kind of a good plot for a science fiction novel. Is a movement where people were just trying to act in unpredictable ways so that the AI wouldn't know what they're doing.
But at the end of the day, you're still buying stuff. The house always wins, right?
Yeah, it does. They win in the end.
I think this conversation is going to resonate really differently depending on who you are. We all have a different tolerance to being surveilled, and it depends on our experiences, how vulnerable we are to being profiled. But if it is something that bothers you, there are other options besides spending money at a department store. You can shop secondhand. You can go to local artisan markets and craft fairs. They're everywhere this time of year. I know I'm going to be making a lot of gifts with my kids. There's more out there than just participating in this surveillance capitalism world that we've been talking about. Ultimately, I think it's just important that shoppers are aware that this is going on when they go to a brick-and-mortar store.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, coming up, the end game.
I'm singing, I'm in a store and I'm singing. I'm in a store and I'm singing.
Hey! There's no singing in the North Pole.
Welcome back to the end game. We've got our producer Lucy Suchek here to quiz Joshua and me.
Hello.
Hey.
Glad to be back. Okay, so that was a lot to digest about AI and surveillance and shopping. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun, and we're going to think about holiday shopping of the past. We'll revisit some of the hot items that were flying off the shelves over the decades and see what you can remember if you're old enough.
I think I have an advantage there.
You do have a slight advantage, but we're not going too far back. We're going to start at 30 years ago. Okay, so I have a list of objects that sold out over the holidays in the 90s, and I want you to see if you can name 3 of them.
This might actually be an advantage for me because I was a little kid and so very focused on top items. I'm going to guess a Nintendo 64.
That is not on my list, but it's a nice close one.
Close one. Okay. How about PlayStation?
No.
American Girl dolls?
No.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'm going to take a crack at this. I'm going to say Beanie Babies.
Yes.
Wow.
Ding, ding, ding. I'll give you some answers. The Furby.
Oh, the Furby.
Barbie Dreamhouse.
Wow. Yep.
Tickle Me Elmo.
Oh, yeah.
Tamagotchis.
Tamagotchis, those are the little eggs that you have to feed.
Yes. You know what? I'm disappointed in myself because if I looked at my Christmas list from the 90s, these items would have been on there.
I know. Next up is 20 years ago, the 2000s. So what were a few popular gifts at that time?
iPods.
Oh.
You are correct. iPod Touch.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I don't know. This is going to sound kind of nerdy, but Magic the Gathering cards?
No, that's not on my list, unfortunately.
It's a little niche.
Oh, yeah.
PlayStation 2.
Yes, PlayStation.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, this is, okay, PlayStation, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii. This is like video game era.
Oh, yeah, the Wii. That was huge. The idea of like kinetic movement and the console being able to capture that. That was cool.
All right. Last up, we're wrapping up with the 2010s. This is when today's teenagers were babies. So what were people buying for gifts in the 2010s?
What about like Juicy Couture sweat sets? That was really big, at least in my town.
That is probably one of them. It's not on my list, though.
Well, if we were looking at my kids, it would have been Nerf guns.
Yes, Nerf guns is on my list.
Oh! I got one.
What about Kindles?
Yes, Kindles is on the list.
Nice.
All right.
This one is surprising to me, and it's the technology theme.
Oh, so what decade? We're in the 2010s?
Yeah, 2010s.
Okay, could it be Alexa devices?
It's AirPods.
Really?
AirPods were invented in 2010s.
They've been around that long?
I guess they have.
Well, thank you for bringing us that trip down memory lane,
You're
Lucy.
welcome. Anytime.
Well, that's it for Booming. Special thanks this week to Joseph Turo, author of The Isles Have Eyes. He gave me a lot of great background info.
If you want to support the show, go to kuow.org/booming. Thank you.
If you have a question about something going on in the economy that you want us to answer, email us at booming@kuow.org.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Jenny Cecil Moore. Our editor is Carol Smith.
I'm Joshua McNichols.
And I'm Monica Nicholsberg.
And we'll see you next time.